And once again, we are back for another catch-up video that I'm doing for 2019 that's already on top of the one that I'm doing for 2018, yeah. Long story short, I'm just really bad at keeping up with things these days. But anyway, The Lion King is the latest remake of a classic animated Disney film, the one that we all know that's based off of Shakespeare's Hamlet, as well as biblical figures like Joseph and Moses, and this one's directed by Jon Favreau, the director of films like Iron Man, Chef, which is a really nice indie film, and then he's also going to be the producer for the upcoming Mandalorian series for Disney+, and the thing that really got him the job for Lion King was the live-action retelling of The Jungle Book. And I was very excited to see what he was going to do with this. I actually remember where I was when I found out that he was doing this. I was, if I remember correctly, I was getting Panda Express, and I was waiting in a drive-thru. I was going to see this girl that I was dating, and this was actually a couple of weeks before I met Mallory the first time. The girl that I was dating at the time, it was, I don't know, it was still fairly new. It didn't end up lasting long. We just kind of, like, drifted off, and I don't think we actually ended anything. I don't remember too much. She wasn't very interesting, in my opinion, or at least we didn't connect on any kind of level, so it wasn't important. But anyway, I was near her place, I was getting Panda Express, and the line was really long in the drive-thru, so I was just scrolling through my subscribed feed, and Collider had come out with a video, and it said Jon Favreau announced directing a live-action Lion King remake, and I went frickin' insane in my car. I was just screaming out of cheer, and luckily I don't think anybody heard me, but, you know. But anyway, sorry. I was really excited for this movie simply because of everything that he did in The Jungle Book, and, you know, unlike The Jungle Book, it wouldn't have any live-action elements in it at all. Jungle Book had just the kid and maybe a couple of, like, small props, but really, other than that, it was more of a CGI fest than a live-action movie, and this one was going to have even less, if none at all, and I've just got to throw this out there. I still don't understand why people don't think that this is an animated movie, because it basically is. And naturally, I would want to talk about my experience with the original animated Lion King, but I'd rather leave it for a future review that I do down the line of this movie, because it's obvious I'm going to do one eventually. But I will simply say that Lion King is my favorite modern Disney animated movie, plain and simple. Despite a couple of issues that I have with the film, but I'll talk about those whenever I get to that review. And so, my expectations for this film were through the roof. They were extremely high, though I drop them as soon as I get in the theater, as I usually do my best to. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but that's just the human in me. Although, even with dropping them, I was worried about the fact that a couple of months prior, Jon Favreau was in an interview. I don't remember with who. I think it was either Deadline or it was Collider. I don't remember exactly, but he stated in the interview that this was not a retelling of the story, but a retelling of it through a different medium, and this was making me a bit worried that this was going to be too much of a shot-for-shot remake, and I definitely didn't want it, but we'll talk about that part in just a bit. Now, before I get into my thoughts on the film, I'm going to just get into my normal disclaimer for those of the uninitiated before I go into things. The way that I convey my thoughts on a film is I do a pro and con list. It helps me best catalog what I think is good or bad about a movie. And while I try to keep the sections separate, if I can make a pro and con work off of each other, or maybe if they're intrinsically tied together, then I take advantage of that, and recently I've started doing that a lot more. But anyway, there's your disclaimer. Let's go ahead and get into my review of 2019's The Lion King.
Run away, Simba, and never return. You must take your place in the circle of life.
So let's start with the biggest positive of this film, and like in the Jungle Book, the visuals are outstanding. This is, in my mind, this is without a doubt going to be the winner for Best Visual Effects in 2020. What is it? Is it the 93rd Oscars? I really don't remember, and I've been keeping track of this. I can't think of it at the top of my head, and I really don't feel like taking time out of this video just to scroll on my phone, spend a couple of seconds doing, okay, I'm wasting too much time talking about this. Anyway, like the Jungle Book, the visuals are outstanding, and they've only gotten better with this film. In the first film, Jungle Book specifically, locales looked photorealistic, and the animals looked the most realistic that they've ever been, and the animals in this film look so photorealistic that if I go back and watch the Jungle Book, they're obviously going to look a little less convincing, which just shows how much further we've gone with visual effects just in 3 years since the Jungle Book came out. This truly looks like a beautiful Animal Planet or National Geographic documentary, or just something that you'd see on Planet Earth or Blue Planet, like that kind of beauty. But that's also where some of the negatives come in. So with these animals being extremely lifelike, you run into the issue that they can't naturally emote, which is something that the Jungle Book, I don't think, actually had an issue with it, because with certain characters you could have them emote, and then with others who, you know, would have a harder time because of what animal they were portraying, they would just emote further through their vocal performance, which is something that Ben Kingsley as Bagheera was able to do, and he gave a fantastic performance in that movie. But almost no one in this film emotes much, which is sad because it makes these iconic lines and slight changes that actually would have been pretty good. It just makes them less impactful overall. I mean, Donald Glover gives a very mediocre voice performance as Simba, and same with John Connie as Rafiki in this movie. Seth Rogen was decent, but not as great as I thought he would be. I know a lot of other people enjoyed his performance. I just thought he was good. And then, hell, even Mufasa himself, the great James Earl Jones, who was obviously portraying this character before and gave an amazing and emotional performance back in the 90s when this movie, when the original movie came out. I don't know, just the majority of the voice cast, or like the majority of the voice cast, James Earl Jones was stinted and stiff in his performance, and it was as though the actors were told to emote less simply because they were portraying characters that couldn't emote. But there are still some good performances in this film. My personal favorite actually was John Oliver as Zazu. I wasn't really expecting this, and while I thought he had the voice for him initially, I was potentially worried, but Oliver knocks it out of the park. His version of Zazu feels true to the legacy of Rowan Atkinson, but he makes it his own by bringing his own flavor of dry British comedy into the mix. And just after Oliver for me was actually Billy Eichner as Timon. He was also another who was able to play with his character and ad-lib with his character, just like John Oliver did with Zazu. And I would say as a whole, I actually prefer Billy Eichner's performance over the original one from Nathan Lane, though Nathan Lane will always be more memorable because he was the original. I also prefer Eichner's singing voice in this. It was very soothing in certain softer parts, and his rendition of Hakuna Matata and Lion Sleeps Tonight was wonderful to listen to. There were even two standouts inside the Hyenas, specifically two that were played by Keegan-Michael Key and Eric Andre. Their banter back and forth, specifically about personal space, was one of those moments where, despite how little fun I was having in the theater, I was still able to just smile and laugh whenever they were speaking. And with me inferring that I wasn't having that much fun with this movie, let's go ahead and go into the cons, because this is going to be the main focus for the rest of the video. My fears that I mentioned earlier in this video, more closer to the start, were actually very well founded. This film is basically a shot-for-shot remake of the original, with just a couple of little tiny differences, and then just a couple of other things that they just put in for, you know, no reason. And I don't know, it doesn't help this film carve out its own personality. Sure, they play with the cinematography sometimes, and each individual shot throughout the movie is immaculate, but it still tries to focus on being that young friend of yours who's sitting right next to you, and he keeps nudging you during an old movie like, hey, you remember that? Oh my god, that part's so awesome. And it loses its emotional potential by rushing through many of the iconic scenes that we all love, usually by having the characters rush through their dialogue in an unnatural sounding way. And even the iconic music is kind of sped through, whether it's the score or the musical numbers. And then when they input new things just for this story, the pace slows down to a crawl, including a very convoluted way that Rafiki learns that Simba's alive. Sorry. It feels like I swallowed something, but I don't know what it was. Ugh. And actually, there's a lot of cringy but funny moments in this movie, especially those that are supposed to be nostalgic callbacks. Mufasa falling to his death and Simba shouting, it all looked the same and yet somehow worse, and it was actually kind of funny, and I actually felt bad. I felt bad for thinking that, and then maybe a week after I saw the movie, I just saw all of these articles where people were making fun of it. I know Collider had one where, I think it was one of the writers, Adam Chitwood. I don't normally agree with him on a lot of his points in his articles, but he made an article where it just said, I'm sorry, Mufasa falling to his death in 2019's The Lion King is kind of funny. And that was one of the few times that I've actually legitimately agreed with anything that he said. Or, well, from all of the stuff that he's made that I've actually read, because I don't read his articles too often. And back to the whole rushing of songs, the biggest offender in this movie is the Be Prepared song. For the longest time, there were rumors that Be Prepared wasn't going to be included in this movie, and there was this outcry of negativity towards the idea that it wasn't going to be in there. And then just 2 months before the movie came out, it was confirmed that the song would be in the movie, and this version they put in is severely cut down in content and feels tacked on, like they had to add it in late because of the backlash, and there's little to no energy in that song. This was a film that really makes me worried about the live-action slate of Disney animated remakes, and even the movies that I once enjoyed, I've slowly begun to regret their existence. For those of you who've been with me for a while, you know that one of my first videos on this channel was my review of the live-action remake of Beauty and the Beast with Emma Watson and Dan Stevens, and, you know, as my sensibilities have changed with age and personal growth, so has the critical side of my brain. And really, the only live-action remakes that I still enjoy are Cinderella, The Jungle Book, obviously, and Pete's Dragon. And right now, we've gotten to 10 plus films in this live-action remake slate. I don't know, even the ones that I'm intrigued about, I'm worried about. Like, I never cared about Maleficent 2 because I didn't care for the first one, and even Mulan, which I'm excited for, I'm really hesitant about. But anyway, back to The Lion King itself. This is a beautiful mess of a film. Everything that is wonderful and beautiful about this version, as well as the original, are just brought down by the lesser aspects. in every way, especially with how rushed the film feels. And that's weird, despite the fact that the original movie is a lot shorter. I'm pretty sure, I don't remember the runtime for the new version, but I'm pretty sure that the animated movie is closer to 90 minutes, and this year's version is like 2+ hours. So I didn't get to feel the emotion that I do every time I watch the original. I even went in telling my wife and my brother-in-law, listen, I'm gonna start crying during the opening scene especially. And I was just sitting there like, why don't I feel anything? Like, there was nothing wrong with the opening, but at the same time, it didn't feel like the energy or like the right amount of nostalgia was there. It just, I don't know. I didn't even get to hear that emotional performance from James Earl Jones. You know, I didn't get that slow emotional moment after the Stampede sequence that I did in the original, where they made sure that the majority of the shots were up close and personal, and you got to hear Jonathan Taylor Thomas's amazing performance in that scene where he's just trying to, you know, wake up his dad, finds out that his dad's still not alive anymore, and he's just shouting out for help, and he's crying. That's one of my favorite scenes in an animated movie, you know, period. And just, I don't know. Actually, in fact, during that section of the movie, and I hate laughing at this, but the way that it was set up and the voice of the kid playing Simba actually made myself and my wife Mallory chuckle, because it was so cringy when he was just like, "Help! Somebody!" Really, I don't recommend this movie to anyone, and because it's been out for so long, probably most of you, if not every single one of you, already saw the movie. And a good majority of you may have liked it, some not so much. It seems like a lot of audience members liked it, at least. I mean, you know, it made like, what, 1.5 million in the box office? I really don't remember how much it made, but yeah, if you enjoyed it, that's fine, more power to you. I'm happy that you guys did, but pure nostalgia doesn't really work on me, and I'm not saying that that's why it worked on you guys, but just after watching the movie, it felt like pure nostalgia that should have worked, but it didn't. And nostalgia done right is still good, but this was not. Hey guys, I just wanted to say thank you for watching this video. In a few seconds, we'll have some buttons and stuff pop up. Click on my channel icon to subscribe to the channel and continue your much appreciated support. And you can also check out a couple of other videos on the channel as well, namely the most recently uploaded, which will be on the left side, and then the other one will be a video that's picked at random by a YouTube algorithm. That'll be over on the right. So anyway, farewell until the next video, all of you casual moviegoers and movie fans alike, and keep on being awesome.